All right, so we're beginning to look at Daniel. And Daniel, for tonight, we won't look so much as the first chapter. We'll read somewhat a part of the first chapter, but we won't look at the specifics just yet. We'll look at bits and pieces of it, but for the most part, we'll look at the Lord's work as a people, as a nation, and also we'll see how the Lord works through captivity, through people being taken from this nation unto Babylon. And in Daniel here, we'll see in verse 1 of chapter 1, it says that in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time, they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. The feeling of being homesick is a universal emotion. That feeling of being departed from an area which we're familiar with and then going to a new area, maybe out of for tourism or maybe out of travel. And yet, after we've been there for a while, we feel this dissonance within our hearts. We feel this dissatisfaction. And as great as the sights and everything is, there's always this longing to return home, to return to that which we are familiar with. And all humans at one time or another, in all of their lives, have experienced this longing of homesickness. We all play the comparison games in our head, at which we have the sudden urge to pit everything that we are familiar with and everything which we are experiencing in this new area. We call this being nostalgic, of which we desire to do things which remind us of our home, remind us of a certain time in our lives. We all have this tendency to really recall and look back on the good old days, but we may not reflect on so much on the fact that we are living them now. It's always a reflection of behind us in our past. And we hope that through some nostalgia, hopefully that we can jumpstart that feeling of looking back. And if you've ever traveled outside the country, that hunger can be even stronger. The surroundings, food, culture, customs, everything is different, even the language. And at first it's nice. No one wants to travel outside of the country and just see everything which you've already been accustomed to. The first time I ever left the States, I think I went on a mission trip to Louisiana. And I remember calling my dad one night, and I said that I was in Walmart at the time, and so I was talking to him on my cell phone, and he said, well, what's Walmart down there like? And I said, well, it's pretty much, if you've been to one of them, you've almost been to about all of them. I said, it's pretty much the exact same thing. If we travel to another country, we really expect to experience different things. We expect to experience different foods, and it's boring if we don't expect those, or it's boring if we don't experience those things. But the longer that we're gone, the more we feel being homesick for our area. Even so much so, where by the time, whether that's in the States or especially in another country, and by the time your plane lands or you finally get to that area of destination, if you're a driver, that you just drive hours upon hours, and you finally park into your parking garage, and you just feel that sigh of relief that you're finally home. And all the things which previously seemed like an inconvenience has now become a joy. And all the things that previously seemed to be really annoying, now you're enjoying it and you're experiencing it, and you've really missed it. Think of the movie It's a Wonderful Life, which is probably my favorite movie. And in the movie, George Bailey is having a hard time of his life and is at the point in which he is going to throw himself off the bridge, and an angel stops him, or the angel jumps into the water and pulls him out. And George Bailey says, well, I wish I had never been born. And so God, through the angel, allows him to give him that wish, and he gets to experience what life is like if he's never been born. And he tries to communicate with all these people and saying, hey, don't you know me? I helped, fund that house. I helped you do this. I helped you do that. And no one's able to recognize him. And they're like, no, I've never recognized you before. And he tries to communicate with his wife, and his wife is just, freaking out because she doesn't know who he is. And so he gets to the point where they finally, the angel grants him his time back, or his life back, and then he goes back to his house and he's rushing in, and all the things of his life which he found extremely annoying, the kids yelling at him. I always kind of, where that one scene where the kid just asking him how to spell everything, and he's just like, how am I supposed to know? Do I look like a dictionary? And then he just runs out of the house. But previously, everything that seemed very annoying to him, now he comes back, and he goes up the stairway, and there's the hole to the stairway, and it falls off, and then he's used to that, and he kisses it, and he puts it back on its place. And it was all a minor inconvenience to him before. Even his children were annoying to him before. And now he comes home after experiencing what it was like not to be alive for so long, or at least not for people to acknowledge that he was alive. And those things even become treasures to him. Our lives, even the minor inconveniences, we can miss those. In the book of Daniel, we see Jews that were exiled from Judah, and everything that they've previously known about their lives have been turned upside down. Psalm 137 is a psalm that was written during the time of the exile, and it was written by people that had experienced great suffering. The Babylonians came in and destroyed about everything that they could, left a little bit of life that was there. Some people they took with them, some they left. In Psalm 137, it's almost a little bit of a depressing psalm. It says in verse 1, by the waters of Babylon, there we sat and wept. When we remembered Zion, on the willows there we hung up our lyres, for there our captors required of us of songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. So there they are with their, mentions the lyres, there they are with their instruments of rejoicing, exuberant joy. And here they are told by their captors, sing them a song, sing a song of your homeland, sing us a song of Zion, play something that you're familiar with, and they don't want to because it reminds them of home. And they're saddened by that. And they said, how shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem, how they said, lay it bare, down to its foundations. O daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed, blessed shall he be who repays you with what you have done to us. Blessed shall be he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock. So they're wanting vengeance upon what they've done to them. And they say, may just as you may caused us to suffer, may your little ones also as well suffer. So it's a psalm of both lament, and also it's a psalm of vengeance. They're wanting to seek the revenge of the Lord upon those who have remained them captive. The emotions of the psalm are very raw, and the heart is laid bare. And you can almost sense the feeling of desperation as you read it. Judah has been taken captive by Babylon. Babylon does things a little bit different than most of the people of their time. The Philistines and the Syrians, most of them come in and they utterly destroy about everything. Philistines, mainly, they'll take a few people captive, for the most part, probably their leadership. Assyrians does the same, but Assyrians will take some, but mostly as slaves. They don't take them for anything else. These groups are all about destruction and death and defeat. And they'll take a few servants here and there, but most of all, they're about plunder. So they want the funds that come with everything they can take, all the silver and gold, and then have slaves come back to build their architect. Nevertheless, the Babylonians would come to lay waste to an area, but also they would take the societal elite with them to make a positive contribution to their world. So they would take the smartest, the brightest, the wisest, the leadership of their area. They would take them apart, bring them to their area, give them new names, give them the new language, give everything that they would raise them up in their customs. Daniel chapter 1 says that they were training them up for 3 years. It's a long time to learn the customs of the Chaldeans. For 3 years, they were to be raised up in that, because your mindset is to be different. Your identity is to be changed according to the Chaldeans. So you're no longer a Judean. You're no longer of Judah. You're no longer to recall upon your past, but now you're a Babylonian. So they figure if they can take the best and the brightest and the smartest from their area and bring them to theirs, they're really make a big contribution to their own nation. And also they would take apart their other nation as well. They would leave them with the desolate. They would leave them with no leadership. They just have to basically work their ways up from the ground up. The Babylonians laid waste in all their society. You wanted to change the mindset, especially for here in chapter 1, we see that there's 4 people that's mentioned: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they rename all of them. That's the beginning, is you want to rename these people from very Hebraic names to very Babylonian names. You name them Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Go from very Hebrew names to extremely Babylonian names. And that helps change your mindset. Because for the Jews, your name means a lot. So it mentions that Daniel, what his name means, and everybody in the Bible always have, every time it mentions their name, a lot of times it mentions what their name means, and it's very frequent for them to do so. And the Babylonians want to take a part of that identity, shelf it, and give them a new identity and their Babylonian names. And the book of Daniel begins in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. And this is the first invasion of Judah by Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. Now Isaiah prophesied of this in Isaiah 39, where the king takes all of these envoys that come by and they want to spy out the land. So in Isaiah chapter 39, King Hezekiah has these visitors come by. They're envoys from Babylon. It says in verse 1 that at that time Meadowbrook Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent envoys with letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he heard that he had been sick and recovered. Hezekiah was previously ill. Isaiah came up to him and said that he would not recover, and Hezekiah wept bitterly, and he put his hands on the wall and he prayed to the Lord. He said, Lord, remember my faithfulness to you, and the Lord gave him back 15 years of his life, and so he recovered. And the Babylonians hear of this, and they come by and they want to take advantage of the fact that he's feeling good, the fact that he's recovered. And the Babylonians are under Assyrian rule, so they want to find out what they can do as far as finding other nations to bring them along and to destroy their Assyrian enemies and to really become the most powerful nation of them all. They come to the king and they have, King Hezekiah, why don't you show us all? That's a dangerous thing to do. This is not very smart at all. It's smart if you're caught up in the euphoric feeling of, well, he just got done adding 15 years to his life that were added. And then also the fact that he's probably a little bit prideful of another nation, such as Babylon wants to come in and see everything that they have. And so he shows them everything. He shows them their army, he shows them their treasure, their storehouses, their armory, everything. And Isaiah comes up to him and he says, well, what did you show him? And he said, well, I showed him everything that we have. Doesn't mention the content of how he said it, but it may have been a little bit of pep in his step as he's saying, yeah, this is how much gold we have, this is how much silver, this is our great army, and maybe a little bit boastful. And like we said, that Hezekiah just got done being healed of a sickness of which he was told he originally wasn't going to be healed. And he might still be a little bit up on the emotional adrenaline of that, of the fact, yeah, sure, okay, the Babylonians, I'll show you all around. And it's not very smart showing your enemies everything that you have, because now they know what to come up against. And Isaiah comes up to him and he says, because you've done this, the Lord is going to give you over unto this nation. Because you've done this, because you disobeyed the Lord, God's going to take you out of the picture. And in 2 Kings, it says, still the Lord, this is after King Josiah's reform, still the Lord did not turn from the burning of his great wrath. So King Josiah makes all of these great reforms in the kingdom, and yet the Lord says that he's not going to turn his wrath away from them, because it had been kindled against Judah because of all the provocations with which Manasseh had provoked him. And the Lord said, I'll remove Judah also out of my sight, as I had removed Israel. And I'll cast off the city that I have chosen, Jerusalem, and the house of which I said, my name shall be there. The Lord promised that any nation that obeyed and sought after him, he would be with them. And the nation that disobeyed and did not seek after him, he would not be with them. That promise was as good as gold for them as the nation of Israel, and it was pretty simple. You just follow me, I will bless you as a nation. If you disobey me, I will curse you. I will give you over unto other nations. In Daniel chapter 1 verse 2 says that the Lord gave the king of Judah into Nebuchadnezzar's hand. So it wasn't as though God wasn't expecting this. It wasn't as though he threw up his hands in the air and said, wow, I didn't know this was going to happen. This is totally foreign to me that the nation of Babylon would just come and wreak havoc on these people. He gave the king over to Nebuchadnezzar. He made it happen in his sovereignty. God judged the disobedience of Judah by giving them over to a Gentile nation. The reformer John Knox said that nations do not have souls, so God must judge them in the here and now. Nations don't have that eternal abiding quality, and so God must mete out the judgment right here and now, which can be a frightening thing. God meets his judgment upon the nations. And this is not the only time that it's happened to God's covenant people, Babylon. Syrians laid siege to them, overtook them, took something of 20,000 captive back to Assyria. And it all happened because they disobeyed God. Jesus himself lamented over the fact when he drew near to the city of Jerusalem, he wept over it. And they said, would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will set up a barricade around you and surround you and hem you in on every side. He talks about their destruction. It's because they rejected their Messiah, and so God allowed the Romans to completely destroy them and wipe them out. God is the judge of all. In Jeremiah 25, says that because they did not listen to the voice of the Lord, he would bring Babylon to take them captive. But yet, even in that, God would still judge the Babylonians still. Because he told them that I'm going to use the Babylonians to chastise you, to punish you, but I'm also going to punish the Babylonians for doing that. And the prophet Habakkuk questions God's use of the Chaldeans. And he says, how could you use the Chaldeans? Here we are surrounded by an ungodly nation, and yet you use them. But God said in due time that he would judge even those who he was going to use as his instrument of judgment. So while God has judged his people, he has not utterly forsaken them. While God may judge us as a nation, he will not utterly forsake us. There's always that remnant. Think of the prophet Elijah when he stands before God and he's like, oh, I'm the only one that's left. I'm the only prophet who preaches the truth. I'm all that's left, even though he knew that wasn't true. And God told him, I have many who have not bowed the knee to Baal. I have a remnant. He powerfully works in the lives of those people we still held in captivity. God gave them up to a foreign nation, but he has not totally forgotten them. He has the right to chastise us. He has the right to bring us through discipline. But yet in that, he does it out of love. And he does it out of mercy. The fact that we may cry out to him, even though how many times did God judge this nation, and yet they went through that cycle of crying out to him, and yet he responded to them. He didn't cover his ears and say, well, too bad for you. I'm just going to go on my own way. God responds to the cries of his people. And how encouraging that is for us. That God hears our cries, God hears our prayers, and he responds. Luke 11 has been going through my mind a lot, that the one who knocks, the door will be answered, that the one who seeks will find, the one who asks, it will be answered unto him. And Jesus mentions he gives two parables, one of a friend who comes at an inconvenient time for another friend who knocks on his door and he asks for bread to be given to his guests. And he doesn't give it to him at first. And Jesus says he's not going to give him the bread at first, but it's because of his persistence that he will give him that bread. And then he mentions this unjust judge that's constantly approached by this widow to seek justice. And the judge doesn't give it to her until he's weary from all of her inquiry, of all the times that she comes up to him. He finally answers that. Now, it may seem a little odd that Jesus would use God the Father as an example, or unjust judge as an example of what God the Father is like. But I think his point is that even if an unjust judge responds to persistence, how much more would a loving Father respond to persistence? When I was a kid and I wanted something for Christmas, which was quite frequent, we would go through the store, and the trick was that they would always tell me anything that I wanted. They would just say, well, we'll get it for you for Christmas. And by the time Christmas came, I forgot 80% of what I asked for. But I would always ask him, and then whenever it came down to it, when my mother would make a list of what she was actually going to get, she knew the things which I really wanted because there was persistence in it. And so she would go through my list and figure out which differentiate between what I went when we go through the grocery store and I saw it on one occasion and then totally forgot about it the next time. And then the thing at which if a commercial came on about that certain toy and I would scream and freak out and be like, I wanted that, and the constant frequent asking for that specific thing. And my mother knew what to eliminate from the rest. And sometimes I wonder if that's what God is like. If he really sees in our hearts of that which we frequently request unto him. And then, and of course in his sovereignty, he always knows what's best for us. And there are those prayers in which we pray maybe once or twice, and he still honors that. And then there's the prayers that's really the cry of our hearts frequently, multiple times, over and over and over again. And God sees that, and God records that. The Revelation talks about the prayers of the saints being kept as a bowl of incense before God. And I think that's cumulative of all the prayers of the saints. And he mentions that he keeps record of all of our tears, and he keeps record of all of our righteous acts that's done to the saints. And God doesn't forget our prayers. And I don't know what he's going to do with them in the end when we stand before his throne, but I think he has them all recorded. Maybe show it to us, I don't know. Maybe he has a whole wall full of our prayers that we prayed out to him. And the book of Daniel is divided between the first 6 chapters is a narrative of Daniel and his friends and their adventures, and then the rest 6 chapters are symbolic visions that we have. And in talking about that, we have visions of messianic visions. We have prophetic visions of the Messiah, the Son of Man that is referred to, and the Ancient of Days giving the Son of Man all dominion and a kingdom and power and glory. And we wouldn't have that prophetic vision if it wasn't for the Babylonian captivity. So good things happened. Good things came out of the Babylonian captivity. While the people may not have experienced that, it may not have felt all that good, that while they were going through that suffering and that heartache and that pain and that homesickness of just longing for their land, it didn't feel good at the time. And it wasn't good in and of itself. But the Lord turned it around to make good come out of it. And he made good things out of these people. He built strong steadfastness in these people, and he made them see amazing prophetic visions. I mean, we wouldn't have these prophecies if it wasn't for their captivity. If it wasn't through the suffering that they went through, this wouldn't be written down for us, that we get to enjoy. The Lord makes good things out of our suffering. He takes the pain in our hearts and he fashions good things out of them. That he conforms us more into the image of Jesus Christ. And talking about being an exile in this world, we are spiritual exiles in this world in which we experience now. 1 Peter tells us that we are sojourners and exiles in the world that we experience. And Hebrews chapter 13 says that we look not to a lasting, for we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Spiritually in this world, we are not abiding in what is our current home. This world is not our ultimate final destination. We seek the time when the kingdom of this world becomes the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ. Everything that we've been accustomed to this world will be put on its head and will be transformed and will be changed. And God will make beauty out of ashes. And God will make unity out of chaos. Because this world seems so chaotic and in such destruction. And yet the Lord's going to turn it on its head and he's going to make wonders out of it. Everything that the devil thinks that he's going to make for his own kingdom, and everything that we think that we are going to try and make for our own kingdom, Revelation says that he's going to turn that around and he's going to make it for his kingdom. The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of his Lord and of his Christ. And as children of God that live in a foreign and strange land, the cry of our heart is, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And in heaven, there is no rebellion. In heaven, there is no disease. In heaven, there is no prayer. There is no pain. In heaven, there's no sin. And in heaven, there's no cancer. All of those things are done away with. I think it's going to take a long time just to get used to the fact that those things are no longer a part of our lives. We're going to need glorified minds just to understand what it's like, as we're so accustomed to it here. We're so accustomed to turning on the news and hearing disaster after disaster, shooting after shooting, earthquake after earthquake. We're so used to that. And we've almost become kind of dull to it. Almost become kind of insensitized to the fact that there's so much suffering in the world. But that's all going to be done away with. And we're going to have to get used to not hearing of those things and to not experiencing that destruction. And the use of we get a taste of that here. as Jesus was praying for the sick and seeing people healed, we got a glimpse of that, of as it is in heaven, so it is here on earth. And that when we pray for the sick, and that by God's power they're healed, we get a taste of that here. We get a taste of seeing what heaven is like. The fact that there is no sickness, there is no darkness, there is no destruction. As Daniel and his friends look to the God of hope during their captivity, we have the same mindset. At least we should have the same mindset. Our minds should be filled with the new heavens and the new earth, and our hearts should be filled with a longing to see our Father face to face. Paul said, for now we see in a mirror dimly and darkly. We can't see it completely, and we can't see it in its totality. And we can't see and understand all of the suffering and all of the destruction. There's going to come a time in which the Father is going to pull that curtain, and it's going to make sense, and there's going to come a time in which we're going to no longer see through the mirror dimly, but which we're going to be able to see face to face. For now we believe in part, but then we'll know fully, even as we have been fully known. And Daniel tells us of that, as they had exiles of which they were resolute to stand by God and to stand by his promises. We are also exiles who are called to stand by God and to stand in this strange and foreign land, that we long for the new heavens and the new earth.